Our episode begins with Goblin thinking that his perception skills are getting better and better. Now, if it was a species he had already seen, he would know its name and its strength. Something was coming towards him until he heard someone calling him. He said he heard it and was already on his way. Goblin goes outside with some goblins, and an elf tells him that he was too long. A mere goblin kept a noble elf waiting. He wanted to know why. Goblin thinks that his instincts tell him that those elves are going to cause a lot of trouble. The elf tells the goblins to be grateful to them because they came to the Goblins and still call them a barbaric species. Goblin thinks he speaks in a very arrogant way. But to cut a long story short, the humans had their eye on the elves' secret treasure and were going to attack soon. The elves asked for help, saying that they would be rewarded accordingly. Old man Goblin thought they would have enough food to feed the village for months, and it seemed like an offer they couldn't refuse. Goblin listens to the old man talking and says that's what it sounds like. The elf says it's a deal, but Goblin refuses. The elf was incredulous at the answer, and Goblin said that they didn't care about the situation of the elves, and if they wanted to ask for something, they should show a little respect. The elf gets angry and goes to take the sword out of its sheath, but at that moment, Goblin begins to glow in such a bizarre way that the elf starts to cry with fright and kneels on the ground. Goblin grabs the elf by the neck and tells him that if he didn't want his head to fly that way, it would be good to tell the escort hiding in the bushes to lower their bows. Only at the same moment, an arrow goes into his face. He holds it with his teeth and breaks it in half. The elf asks everyone to leave their positions. Goblin was rejecting the elf's request because he wasn't in the mood to help. But he was also a resident of the forest, so if humans showed up and wreaked havoc, he would gladly fight back. Then he throws his spear on the ground, which shatters several spears near the elven soldiers. Goblin tells him not to ask how it works. If he hits Galsagal Bay on the ground, red spears are fired continuously in a radius of 100 meters. And then he lets go of the elf who runs off with his soldiers. Goblin thinks it's a real waste. Goblin thought that after that scare, they wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. If you don't want to be threatened by Goblin, subscribe to the channel and you'll be exempt from any reprisals from this goblin. We've reached the 45th day. That day, Goblin hunted down gray slimes deep in the forest, using a fire skill to destroy the slimes, about 20 of them. The skills that Goblin learned from the core of the slimes were physical attack tolerance, his own stunt creator, and fluid replenishment reconstruction. Next, he makes a cut in his finger to drip some blood on a rock, and then he sees a replication of his own blood. That's what the stunt creator himself did. He could see himself, so they could share a field of vision, which gave him a good idea. We have reached the 46th day. Goblin made party dresses for Goblin and the others using the fabric soaked with the dub made from his blood. This meant that they could be used as a radio in emergencies. We've reached the 47th day. A blood double of Goblin's is keeping watch as the elves walk through the forest. Goblin's bad feeling was right. Those elves don't learn, they were there again. The elves arrive and are ready to attack. Goblin, very angry, uses a wind skill on the elves. His breath is so strong that the elves can't move. Goblin then uses his web ability on all the elves, leaving them all trapped. He takes them all to the goblin cave and asks them why they came back. The elf replied that Goblin's barbaric behavior had tarnished his pride, asking who Goblin thought he was. He goes on to say that Goblin deserved to die for his behavior. The elven soldiers said they tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. Goblin replies that he has a suggestion. First, the elves should consider that this idiot leader of theirs is already dead. All the others can compete against Goblin's people. Whoever won, he could guarantee that he wouldn't die. If they wanted to stay alive, they had to fight and win. And after the fight, 23 of the elves who took part, 6 of them lost. By the way, all 6 losers were men. But the secret is that he manipulated the formation of his opponents, as he didn't want to kill the beautiful women. Goblin devoured the elves and acquired the skills Deep Woods Dweller, Elemental User, Knowledge of Archery, the art of tracking and hiding. Gobaru then asks the winning team to hand over their equipment and magic items. From now on, the team were his prisoners, and they were frustrated thinking that he was going to set them free. Gobaru says that they came to take lives, so he couldn't leave them free. Gobjai was happy because the elves were beautiful and the night would be long. Gobaru tells Gobjai not to touch them, and Gobjai just accepts. After all, he was the leader of the village. Gobjai was supposed to set a good example for the youngsters, but every now and then he felt like swinging his hips, and it was so rare that he would end up exploding. Gobaru says that if it's done in moderation, it's okay. Gobaru then went to the leader of the elves, saying that he would think about how to execute him. The leader of the elves begs him to stop. We arrived on the 48th day. Gubkichi is defeating a giant bear. He had reached level 100. On the 49th day, the goblins are shocked by Gubkichi's appearance. Gobmi doesn't even recognize him. Gobaru says she almost didn't. Gubkichi has developed absurdly. Gobaru thinks that Gubkichi's development was not normal, but a variant. His skin had been burnt by the blessing of the demigod of fire, and his shiny skin, hard as steel, he said was because he had also received the blessing of the demigod of war. And then Gubkichi tells Gobaru that since he had become an ogre, he hadn't had a worthy opponent, and he even thought he wouldn't be able to reach him. But now he could tell Gobaru to fight him again. And then they will fight. Gobaru and Gubkichi had a formidable fight, but Gobaru won. When it came to fighting techniques, Gobaru was still the best, but Gobaru admits that Gubkichi really is his rival. Something had happened the night after he had exhausted himself in the competition. He saw a being apologizing and gave him a skill. Gobaru wakes up again with Gobmi and the red-haired girl by his side and wonders what has happened. Gobu says he has an emergency. Gobu said he didn't know if they were inspired by the Gubkichi, but they had 4 new hobgoblins. The alchemist said that Gobaru was late and said that she had already done the aptitude tests. One of those hobgoblins had potential, and the other had the potential to be a cleric. The goblin introduced himself, saying that his name was Gobdi, and that he would do his best to heal as many wounded people as possible. Gobaru scowled as Gobdi called him Big Brother. And then Gobaru asks Hobse that it's time to explain his form. Hobse says he was waiting for him to ask. Gobaru realized that Hobse had also evolved that morning when he woke up. She had become part of the lineage of the lords. It looks like a half-lord sorceress, but lords shouldn't have those marks. They are similar to the ones Gobaru had on his body. When suddenly Hobse punches Gobaru in the abdomen, asking why he was standing there. She was bursting with energy, and I wanted to test how much better she had become. We then see Hobse dispersing several fireballs and setting the forest on fire. She boasts that she has plenty of energy and could throw 20 more times, but Gobaru says there's no need, it was more than enough, and thanks her for the demonstration. Gobaru thinks that the skills are a little inferior to the real thing, but Hobse will certainly become a true sorceress lord next time. And Gobaru gives Hobse new equipment to celebrate her progress. Gobaru thinks that he was the reason for the rapid development of the village. Gobaru had a theory. The evolution of goblins begins after about a month of life, depending on the conditions in which they grow up. In any case, Gobaru should be happy with every new colleague who develops, but there are also some who haven't grown in that good environment. We arrived on the 52nd day. Gubkichi and Gobaru hunted a tricorn, and Gobaru told Gubkichi that they would eat well that night. When they arrive at the village, Gobaru comes across some goblins saying that they have decided to leave because they have worked hard for something in life, and the younger goblins are leaving them behind. Gobaru says it's fine, and they don't understand. But Gobaru explains that they took their own equipment, so there was no reason to stop them. Gobaru gives her a parting gift, a knife made of mithril, a magical metal. And then the goblins leave. We have reached the 53rd day. As Gobaru walked through the forest, he saw an orc carrying a human who was already dead. Then Gobaru attacks the orc from behind because he believes that the human has a peculiar ability. And then he learns the monster taming skill. And in the night, he goes to the alchemist, who tells him to listen and contain his surprise. She had managed to prepare something that he really wanted to drink. Goblin drinks it and tastes the alcohol and is very happy and grateful. We've reached the 54th day. The goblins of his parents' generation left the village, and if anyone preferred to go too, they just had to raise their hand. Goblin wouldn't stop anyone, and they would even receive a farewell gift from him. No one raised their hands, so he told everyone to drink a toast. We've reached the 55th day. After that, things went more smoothly. Goblin made ear cuffs that contained his blood, the aim being for them to serve as transmitters. We arrived on the 56th day. They were testing the ear cuffs, and seeing that it worked, he had to produce more. We arrived on the 57th day. Goblin was attacking a tricorn. Goblin saw that the horse was unharmed and used the monster tamer. For him, it was a fine choice to be the first familiar. As well as a tricorn, he also captured a brown bear to be familiar with, and also the leader of the Black Wolf Pack was his pet, who will serve as a bodyguard for the humans. On the 50th day, something happened that surprised him. The redhead who trained as a warrior had never stood out when suddenly she turned the page. Goblin had arranged everything for her to fight with. Just one at a time, she killed 3 kobolds with her bare hands. Goblin is eating some meat, and the redhead asks if she can have some. He said it was fine and handed it to her. She sniffs and doesn't eat, saying that she seems to have found a new occupation. She runs after a red deer and tells Goblin that she can even get to that kind of prey. Goblin then tells Goblin that that day another goblin had been attacked by humans and fled home. Goblin understands that things are beginning to happen, the great war between humans and elves. We've reached day 6. Goblin wakes up, realizing that the kobolds are fleeing, but he doesn't know who is after them. It was too dark. Even with Goblin's perception, he can no longer tell them apart. He sets off with his soldiers in search of the kobolds. The question was who came next after the kobolds. When Goblin came across magical creatures, they were skeleton warriors. Goblin's archers attack, but to no avail. Goblin detected something large behind the hordes of skeleton warriors. It could be the source that creates the skeleton warriors. Goblin punches a skeleton warrior, breaking his skull completely. And then he tells his soldiers to attack with blows and not weapons, so they all start fighting. He told everyone to smash the skeleton warriors as it was a great opportunity to gain experience points. Then he said he would take care of the rest, ordering his people to retreat. Goblin said he could do it in 10 seconds. Goblin picks up his red spear and goes around beating up everyone, and with one blow he manages to break 5 skeletons in one fell swoop. He only counted 3 seconds. It was faster than he thought. He takes the skull of one of the skeleton warriors and gains the Undead creation skill, superior armor and magic absorption, light damage control, light magic damage control. The kobolds bow down, thanking Goblin for saving them. He remembers that the kobolds had accidentally unearthed Velvet's treasure that they had buried. As a result, his guardian, the great skeleton soldier, awoke. To escape the advance of the skeleton warriors, they risked fleeing to the cave where the evil and dark ogre lives. Goblin doesn't understand why they call him an honorable lord, even though he and his people had killed several kobolds. The kobolds were aware, but they knew that they were only still alive thanks to Goblin's help. Goblin didn't understand because another gang always came along to join him.